In this video, we're going to recreate the Works submenu from the UberMenu demo site. Now, this submenu pretty much just combines a lot of the different features that we've already worked on in other submenus into a single submenu. So you can see the entire thing works within tabs, and we have some normal mega menu columns here, and we also have some image items, as well as some background images. Alright, so first, let's just go over the basic structure of what we're doing here in the Works submenu. This entire submenu is occupied by a tabs block. So this whole thing is within one tabs item. So within that tabs block, we have 3 tab toggles on the left here, which form this left column. And then each tab toggle has a tab content panel on the right. And when we switch between our different tabs, those different panels appear. Within this first panel, we have 3 columns. First, we have just an image item with no text. In the second column, you'll see that we actually have 2 different blocks of content, a bestsellers block and a drama block. So what we've done here is we've used an advanced UberMenu item called column to create this wrapper, and then we've put our 2 sections within there. And in the third column, we just have a normal mega menu column with items in it. You'll also notice that we have a background image over here on the right, and we've specifically left room for that by not having a 4th column here. We also have this submenu footer content in the footer of our submenu here as well. And this can be anything you like, and it's something that you style yourself because it can be any code you like. In the second tab, we again have an image item for our first column, and our second, third, and fourth columns are all just normal mega menu items with column headers and submenu items which have descriptions. And in our third tab, this first column here, you'll notice, doesn't have an actual column header. This is just, so again, we've used a special column item here to wrap our items. The second column here is just a normal column with a column header and its normal items below it. And then each of these last 2 columns is just an image item with the text disabled. And you'll notice on this submenu, we have things aligned a bit differently. Each of these columns takes up 1/6 of the submenu, while each of these columns takes up 1/3. You'll also notice that we have an icon for each of our tab toggles. And in the bottom left, this is another background image, except this background image is for the entire Works submenu. So you'll notice that this background image is always visible no matter what tab we're in, whereas this background image is only visible when we're in the Movies tab. So this background image is specific to movies, while this background image is for the entire submenu. Alright, let's get into building our menu. So we'll come back to our the site we're using to build this tutorial, and you can see we already have our other submenus present. Now we're going to work on the Works submenu. So we'll go to our Menus panel, and obviously we want to add child items to the Works to make it submenu. You can see we already have a lot of menu items here. So every time we add a menu item, it's going to go to the bottom. We're going to have to drag it all the way up to the top, and that's going to be pretty painful. There's a couple of things that we can do to mitigate that. One, we could drag the Works all the way to the bottom, and then we can build our menu just at the bottom of the menu. That way we only have to do that long drag once, and then one more time when we want to drag it back up to the top once we've got our format down. So that'd be one way to do it. Another way is that we can use the menu management enhancer, which is another plugin I offer. That plugin will allow you to retract and expand these different items, and that can help a lot with managing menus that have a large number of menu items. The other thing is, in case you're creating a menu with lots of menu items like this, make sure that you've installed the Faster Appearance Menus plugin. I'll show you I have that installed here. This is a plugin that I've created that fixes a bottleneck in the WordPress core code. There's actually a track ticket in for this, but basically the crux of it is if you have a large number of menu items, the WordPress core menu system is going to get really slow. Whether or not you have UberMenu enabled, it's just the number of menu items that you have. So this plugin fixes that, and they're actually going to incorporate a version of this code into the core WordPress code eventually, but that's a pretty slow process. So in the meantime, you can install this plugin. It's called Faster Appearance Menus. It's available in the WordPress repository for free, and it'll really speed up your menus panel, assuming you have a lot of menu items. So I definitely recommend installing it. All right. So again, to make it easier on ourselves, adding menu items to the Works menu, we could drag it to the bottom. We could use the menu management enhancer. But what we're going to do in this tutorial is use a special item called a menu segment. This allows us to build our submenu for the Works in an entirely separate menu and then integrate it right into this existing menu. So the first thing we'll want to do is actually create our new menu segment. So it's just like creating any other menu. We click Create a New Menu and we give it a name. Now, I know that this is going to be a menu segment. It's not going to be a menu that stands on its own. So I just like to label it segment. That way it's easy to identify as such. But you can label it however you like. And we're going to call it the Works submenu. So we'll create this menu. And I'm just going to give it a random menu item just so that we can identify. And I'm going to save this menu with one menu item in it. Now I'm going to switch back to the menu that we've been working on, Demo Recreation. And I'm going to add, under UberMenu Advanced Items, a menu segment item. Now I'm going to drag this all the way up to the top, but luckily that's the only time we'll have to do this long drag. And make it a child item of the Works. Then what I'm going to do is click and open the menu item settings. And you'll see there's only one setting here for the menu segment item, and that is which menu do we want to insert into the menu at this point. And we will choose the segment that we just created, the Works submenu. Then we'll save that item, and we'll save our menu to add the menu segment to it. Now if we refresh the front end, now you'll see that the Works has a submenu, and its content is the Works submenu item, which if you remember was the item that we added to our Works menu segment. So now we can switch back to the Works submenu segment. By the way, you can ignore all these other menus. They're just other menus that I'm using in this install, but the only ones we're using for this tutorial are the Works submenu and the demo recreation that we were just looking at. And now we can begin building our submenu within this menu, and it'll be a lot easier to manage that way. Now keep in mind when you're using menu segments, don't go crazy with them. You don't want a huge number of menu segments in your menu. So I would recommend only using them when you have a logical segment of your menu that you want to pull out from the structure. The other thing that's useful about them is not only if you are not only to sort of separate out your menu to make it a little more manageable, but it also means that you can reuse those menu segments in different menus. So say you have a products menu or a products submenu that might appear in several different menus. You can make a menu segment out of that and then incorporate that into different menus throughout your site if you wanted to. Just keep in mind that the settings will obviously be the same across all of those menus for the individual menu items. So we're going to get rid of this item that I was just using as a placeholder. And the first thing we want to add within our submenu here is a tabs item, because remember, the entire menu is just one big, the entire submenu of the works is just one big tabs block. So under UberMenu Advanced Items, we're going to add our tabs block, save the menu, and you can see now it's telling us to go ahead and actually add some child items within the tabs. All right, so the first thing within the tabs, we'll want to add these toggles, movies, books, and music. So I'm using a custom taxonomy here called product categories, and that custom taxonomy is associated with a custom post type called products. These are specific to my site. You will have different options available here, and you can, if you're not seeing the options you want, if you have a custom post type or a custom taxonomy that you're aware of and it's not available here, you'll want to click the Screen Options tab in the upper right, and then you can display or hide whichever types of menu items are available for your specific site. So I'm going to add some product categories as our tabs: books, movies, and music. And we'll make them children of tabs. Save that new menu structure. And you can see that we already have our tabs block with our toggles here. The first thing you might notice is that by default, this is going to take up 1/4 of the entire tabs block is going to be these tab toggles on the left. But we want it to be a little bit thinner than that, so we're going to set it to 1/5. So we'll open the item settings for the tabs item, and we're going to change the tabs toggle layout width to 1/5. All right, that looks a little nicer. The next thing that we'd like to do is add our icons for each of these. So for movies, books, and music, we're going to add an icon that will appear in the toggle there. So we'll open the settings for each of them, click on the icon tab. For movies, we're going to use this little film strip. Save that. For books, we will select the book. And for music, we will use the headphones, which I'm not spotting, so I'm going to search for it, and there they are. All right, so now our icons appear. So then let's get started now with creating the tab content panel content for movies. Referencing our demo site, the first thing we want is this image for a movie poster. So I'm using just some stock images that I got from Graphic River, because obviously I don't want to be violating any copyrights using real movie posters. So let's pretend that this is a movie poster for The Empire Strikes Back. So we're going to add the Empire Strikes Back item under movies, and just show you what that's like out of the box. Now the Empire Strikes Back appears when we hover over movies. All right, so we want to turn this into an item that has an image and no text. So let's just go through it a step at a time for this first one. First, let's go ahead and add our image. And here's our mock-up movie poster. Select that. And let's leave the rest of the settings just as is for now. Remember, it's going to inherit default settings from the UberMenu control panel. And that doesn't look very nice. What's going on is it's inheriting the default size that we set, which we're using in these other submenus like images. But we don't want to crop this image, and we don't want it at this size. So we can override those settings for this particular menu item. So within the image tab still, we'll scroll down to image size, and instead of inheriting, which is going to be this size that we've set in the UberMenu control panel, we're going to change this size to medium. Now you can see that the image is no longer cropped, which is good, and it's displaying at a much nicer size within this menu. The other thing we want to do is, if we look at the demo, these columns are each 25% of the tab's content panel width. So we're going to set that as a default for this submenu. So we'll click on the options for movies, and then we will click the submenu tab. And we're going to set the submenu column default to 1/4 so that all the columns within the movies content panel will be 1/4 width. And that image will automatically scale within that column. And the last thing we want to do is we don't want this text to display. We just want to display an image, because you would expect the movie poster would actually say the name of the proper movie on it. So the text would normally be redundant. So we'll open the settings for The Empire Strikes Back, and under layout, we will by default the layout assumes you want the image on the left and the text to the right, and we're going to change that to image only. And now you can see only the image appears. Alright, so let's do the second column. The second column is a little more interesting because we have these two segments, bestsellers and drama. So let's go ahead and add those items, and you'll see what they do out of the box. If you've been following along, I'm sure you already know what will happen. Bestsellers and drama. And you'll see that these items now create new columns, and they become column headers, which is what we expect. That's exactly how things work within the mega submenu as well. But what we want in this case instead is for them to stack into a column. So what we're going to do is wrap those items in a special column item. So under UberMenu Advanced Items, we will add a column to the menu. This is basically just a wrapper that allows us to add some column structure and then put content within that column. So we make bestsellers and drama children of that column item. Save that. And now those two items stack within a single column. Now we also want them to be headers. By default, if you put items within a column, they're going to act like normal items. But we want them to be headers, so we'll change that in a minute as well. But first, let's add their child items. So The Hunger Games, American Hustle, Frozen, and Gravity. And we make those child items of bestsellers. And then for drama, we have The Departed, The Wolf of Wall Street, The Shawshank Redemption, and Saving Private Ryan. And we'll make those children of drama. Alright, so let's save that and see what we get. Alright, so now we pretty much have the structure we want. The only real difference is that bestsellers and drama don't really stand out, and we would like those to be headers because they're heading up these segments. So we will open up the settings for bestsellers, and we just change this first setting right here, item display, to header. And we're going to do the same thing for the drama item. And you can see now they display as headers. The one last thing that's a little bit different here is if you look at the Shawshank Redemption item compared to the one here, in our menu it's wrapping. And that's just like it should be. This text doesn't fit within the column that we have here. Remember, we have this set to 1/4, so any text that doesn't fit within that width will automatically wrap, just like it should. But in this case, we're probably only off by a pixel or two, so I want to force this item not to wrap, even though the column isn't technically large enough. So I'm going to open up the settings for the Shawshank Redemption, and under the General tab, I'm going to scroll down to this setting called Don't Wrap Title Label Text. I'm going to save that. Now you'll see that the Shawshank Redemption doesn't wrap onto a second line, so it looks a bit nicer. Now keep in mind, this setting will just make sure that the text never wraps. So if you have an extremely long piece of text, it's just going to run right over anything else in your menu. So generally you don't want to use this setting, but in this specific case, we know that this menu item isn't going to go outside of this column, so we're using it just for a little visual tweaking. Alright, so let's move on to the third column, this Sci-Fi Fantasy. So let's add our Sci-Fi Fantasy item. And I actually just dragged it into the wrong place, so we don't want it to be a sub-item of column anymore. We want it to be a sibling of column so that it appears as a new column. And under that, we're going to have Inception, The Hobbit, Empire Strikes Back, Dark Knight. We'll make these items child items of Sci-Fi Fantasy. And now we have our third column. Alright, so we've pretty much recreated the content of this menu at this point, of this particular tab panel. So now let's add in our background image. Now keep in mind that this background image has been designed to fade into the background of this submenu so that it looks nice. If there were hard edges on this image, meaning if the colors ran right up to the edge, it would look pretty strange, wouldn't be very appealing. So that means you need to choose an image or make your image so that it either fades into the same color you're going to use as your submenu or make it transparent. If you use a PNG with a transparent background, it's going to be a lot more flexible because if you change the color subtly, it won't make a difference. But a PNG file is also going to be less efficient because they're by nature larger files for the same image than if you're using a compressed JPEG with a solid background color. But that choice is completely up to you. So to set this background image for our menu, we're going to look at the Movies menu item because we want to set an image for its submenu. So we'll open the settings for Movies and click the Submenu tab. And we're going to scroll down to the submenu background image setting. We'll select that, and you can either upload a new image if you want, or you can select an image from your library, and we already have this one in the library. So we're going to select this Wonderboy background image, and you can see it appear here. And by default, it will appear in the bottom right because that's where most background images in menu submenus tend to go, so that's the default, and we're not going to change that in this case. So we're going to leave the rest the way it is. Save that menu item. And now our image appears. Alright, the last little bit for this tab panel is this custom content at the bottom here. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this is, just inspect this element. All I've really done is added a link. So I'm going to copy this same HTML and we'll paste it into our menu. So if we scroll down a little further, again within the Movies settings under Submenu, we'll see there's a Submenu Footer Content setting here. I'm going to paste this HTML, so obviously you can make a link to whatever you want. You can add any HTML you'd like here. Just keep in mind you're responsible for styling it because UberMenu doesn't know what you're going to put here, so it doesn't know how to style it for you. So let's save that and you'll see what we get. So there's our content within this tab panel. Obviously it doesn't really look the way we want it to because it's unstyled. It's just inheriting styles from the theme or whatever residual styles are in there from your site. So we're going to give it some styles of its own. And I'm just going to copy the styles that I used from the demo site. I've just created a default anchor style and a hover anchor style. So I'm going to copy these, and let's play around a bit in the dev tools here. Now, just pasting this isn't going to do anything because I'm styling a very specific footer content area. So if we look at our DOM here, in the markup, you'll see that each submenu footer that you add gets a custom ID, and this one's ID is 626. So I'm going to change this from 183, which was from the demo site, to and now you'll notice that we have this transparent or semi-transparent background, that the font is a bit smaller, the color is white, and when we hover over it, it turns orange. So now that we know this style works, I'm just going to copy it out of the DevTools here. And I'm going to go to the UberMenu control panel. And we'll go to General Settings, and under Custom CSS Tweaks, we already have some custom CSS from an earlier tutorial that we did. So we'll add in our new CSS. And it's always a good idea to label this so that we know what the heck it's for in the future. And we'll save those settings. Now when we refresh, we'll see that we've got our content in there with our custom styles. Alright, so we've pretty much recreated our submenu at this point, or our first tab content panel, I should say. You'll notice that I've specifically designed this submenu, I've designed the content of it to leave space for our background image. So a background image isn't going to take up any space because it's just a background. It's just like setting a background color that doesn't displace any content like an actual image tag would in your HTML, because again, it's just a CSS background. So you have to actually leave space for it. And that's why we haven't added a fourth column here. If we did, it would just overlap our background and it would make things difficult to read. We've also stopped this a bit short. We haven't put items going all the way down to the bottom, though we could, of course. We can check that same setting on Terminator, by the way. Don't wrap the title. And that brings it up a little more to expose more of this image so that it almost looks like the text wraps around the buildings a bit. Alright, so now we've recreated that first submenu almost exactly. So let's move on to the second tab content panel under Books. And again, here we have an image as our first item. So let's add one of our books. We'll pretend that we have a book cover for Oh, the Places You'll Go. Make that a child of books. And we'll open its settings and we'll change the image. We'll select our book cover, which is here. We're going to, again, change the image size because remember, we don't want it to be cropped down to a landscape style image. We want it to retain its settings. So we're going to choose medium, which you'll notice is not cropped. And under layout, we don't want the text to show, we just want to see the image. So for our item layout, we're going to choose image only. save that and save our menu. And there's our image. Again, in this submenu, we're going to want everything divided into 4 columns. So for on our books item, we'll open the submenu tab, and we're going to set the submenu column default to 1/4. All right, and the image is now sized within that 1/4 column. So now we're adding bestsellers, editors' picks, and fiction to create our column headers. So those items automatically become our column headers. And then let's see, under bestsellers, we want to add a Game of Thrones, The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, and Oh, the Places You'll Go. So there's our first column. Then let's add editors' picks and fiction as well. Ready Player One, Ender's Game, American Gods, and The Great Gatsby. And now we have our 4 columns of books. All right, you'll see what's missing here, obviously, are the author names. So those are descriptions. I'm not going to add all of them in because you don't need to watch me do that, but we'll just do this first column. So in our menus panel, the descriptions are not part of the UberMenu settings. They're just part of the core WordPress menu item system. So to view that, we'll click this down arrow for our specific item, and you'll see a description box. If you don't see the description box, that means you need to go up to the screen options panel and check description. This will hide and show the descriptions box within each menu item. So I'm just going to type in the author names here. All right, we'll save our menu. And now you'll see the author names appear below their books. And obviously we could do the same thing for the rest of these items, but I'm sure you can extrapolate from there. All right, so let's move on to the music tab. Our first column doesn't actually have a header, so what we're going to do is add a column item and then add our normal items within that column. So first we add an advanced item column. Make that a child of the music tab. And then we want to add within that our various music categories or genres. Okay, so let's save the menu and see what we have so far. All right, so there's our column of genres. You'll notice that in our demo menu, the top one is blue, and it's because we have it highlighted. So you can highlight any menu item that you like by clicking the menu item settings, and under the general settings, we'll check the highlight link option. Now each skin has a different type of highlighting, different color, and you can also override that in the customizer if you want to, but the default skin uses blue as its highlight. All right, and let's add our second column. Our second column is a bit more normal. It's got a column header and then items below it. So we are going to add our artist item as the header, and then each of these artists will be within its column. And we want to rename this artists item to top artists to match our demo. Save that. And there's our second column. All right, now our last two columns are just images, and these are supposed to represent album covers with silly names, but let's pretend that they're actually real artists. So we will add let's add Imagine Dragons and Macklemore. We'll save that just so you see what we have so far. This will create our two new columns. All right, so there's Imagine Dragons and Macklemore, and we obviously want to turn those into just images without text. So for each of those items, we'll open the settings, we'll go to the Image tab, we'll click Select. We will choose the image that we want to use and select it. We'll again want to override the image size. We don't want it to be cropped. We want to see the whole thing, so we'll select medium. And for our layout, we don't want to see any text. We just want to see the image, so we're going to choose the image only for our item layout. And then we're going to do the same thing for Macklemore. We'll select the album cover. We'll change the layout to image only, and we'll change the image size to medium. All right. Now, here is our submenu. You can see the images, but obviously they're not aligned the way we want them to be. We want to make sure that the width of these four columns adds up to 1 or 100% so that they actually all fit on one row. Right now, they're all just sized naturally to their contents, and the contents don't fit within one row, so we'll need to adjust that. So to add up to 1, what we're going to do is make each of these columns, each of these columns will be 1/6, and each of these columns is going to be 1/3. And that'll make sure that we fill up the entire row, but don't wrap. So we'll go item by item. We'll start with this first column. We want this column to be 1/6. Next is the top artists column. Under the layout tab, we also want this item to be 1/6. Next, we'll look at our album covers, and we want to change those to 1/3 each. All right, now let's see what we've got. And now you can see we have our 4 columns, the first 2 of which are 1/6, and the last 2 are each 1/3. All right, so the last thing that we need to do is put this submenu background for the entire submenu in the lower left corner. So you see that this background is always visible, and that's because it's for the entire submenu rather than for an individual tab panel like with this background. So that means we're going to want to adjust the submenu settings for the works item. As you remember, we're working within a menu segment here, so we're going to want to switch back to our other menu in order to edit that top level item. So let's edit our demo recreation menu. And here's our works item. We'll open its settings. And under the submenu tab, we're going to scroll down to its submenu background image setting. And we will select our image. We'll select this image, which has, again, had transparency added to it so that it blends into the background properly. We'll set that image. And we want this image to appear in the bottom left, not the bottom right, so we're going to change that. And let's save our settings. And there it is in the bottom left. Alright, so now we've successfully recreated the Works submenu. Compare it to our demo site here. Alright, and that also concludes recreating the entire UberMenu demo menu. So I hope that you found these tutorials instructive and useful for you.